In this video, I'll show you how to create a commissioning service flyer like this in Photoshop. This can also be used for send-off flyers, for other invitations, church-related invitations, and you can do all this in Photoshop. And this is coming up. Hi everybody, Innocent here and welcome to the channel. Over here we make videos like this. If that is something that sounds like you're interested, kindly consider subscribing. Inside the description will be a link to download all the resources that I'll be using, so you can download it and use them. And in case you practice and you want to let me know, you can send it to me on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, Snapchat, TikTok, everywhere via _innocent. And don't forget to follow me on these social media handles for other tips as well. That said, let's get into Photoshop and let's get started. First of all, I created this in the form of an invitation or an envelope type of design. So to set that up, press Ctrl N to open your preset, and then we'll go to print. Now the envelope size that we normally use, some people use the C6, but the DL is the most common one. So you choose the DL. We don't want it vertical, so we are going to change the orientation to landscape here. Click on this one, and then you can click on create. So you're going to have something like this. Now the first thing we want to do is to go to file, place embedded, and bring our first background in. So this is a vector background that I got from online. So you're going to bring that in. You scroll out, and then you're going to open to fit the entire canvas. Okay, so you can right click and rasterize it, press Ctrl Shift and then U, and then you can decrease the opacity way down. So I decided to go for 10. So you can see that it is very faint. Okay, it doesn't look like too much at the background. You can even decrease it some more if you want to. Now the next thing we want to do is we want to create a rectangle over here. So let's choose a rectangle tool, and we are going to create a rectangle. This will depend on how much information you have at hand. So you might either want to make your rectangle a bit bigger or smaller, like this, but either way we can adjust it anytime. You can choose any colors, but this is the color that I settled for. So there's like a shade of blue, so we are going to use this color for the meantime. Right on top of this rectangle, we are going to duplicate this background that we placed. So Ctrl J to duplicate that. You drag that right on top of the rectangle, and then you are going to change the blend mode to soft light. Okay, so for this one we are going to increase the opacity a little bit, so it has to be a little bit more. We then right click and choose create clipping mask. So this is going to be right inside of our rectangle. It's not going to be entirely on top of this one, so it's going to be on the rectangle. If you feel like it's too much, you can still decrease it if you want to. Now once you have this, you can then bring in your subject. So we bring up subject here, and then we are going to take off the background. So to do that, you go to window, properties, and then you can go to quick actions here to take off the background. So you open quick actions and then you select remove background. In seconds your background is removed, and you see how fast and solid this one actually came out because of how high quality the picture is. So please, pastors, artists, people that we work with, kindly do provide us with high quality images and our work will be 90% done. So once the subject is ready, we take him to the project that we are working on. Now you press Ctrl T, you take your time, you position him, you transform him to match the exact area you want to place him right there, like that. Okay, now we are going to touch up the image a little bit to make it blend with the background that we are using. So we go to filter, camera raw filter, and you make adjustments over there. I'll mention this again, that this entirely depends on the image that you are using. It is subjected to your image. At this point, you might not necessarily have to follow all that I'm doing here. You just play around with the options that you have. So I'm going to open my shadows a little bit. I'm going to contrast it a little bit, and for the clarity, I'll open my clarity. I don't want it too much. I'll add a bit of texture as well, not so much. And then I'll go to my detail. So for the detail, I'm going to increase my noise. That is there. I'm going to increase the noise reduction so that the noise isn't too much, and that means that I'm going to adjust my sharpening also so that it doesn't look so very raw. I mean, so far this is what we've done. So you can have this as compared to old one. This is the new one, this is the old one, right? So let's go back to the basics and let me decrease the shadows a little bit. I'm not basically going to do too much here, just something like this for the sake of the tutorial. You can take your time to play around. You can even go for color grading and all. You can grade it slightly so that it looks a bit darker, not entirely darker. Like I said earlier, this is entirely dependent on your image, so you can play around with the options that you have. Once you're done with that, go ahead and you click OK, and now you see that we move from this to that. Simple, right? And if you zoom in very clearly, you can see that there are some colors over here which we don't really like. So this already has a layer mask. You choose your brush tool and make sure that your hardness is 0. You increase your brush size a little, and then you can take time to brush off this area. This will take a lot of time, so you just have to take time and do this. I'm just going to skip this part, but I believe you get the point, right? All right, so once you've taken your time to get this done, you can see that now the edges look smooth and blended to the background. If you really take your time to do this, this might be very difficult, but it's worth it, right? So afterwards, we can now start adding the details to it. So the first one will be the church name. So for the church name, you're first going to select a rectangle tool here. You set the radius to about 50, and then you hit enter, and then you can draw a very nice simple radius like that. Now on top of this one, we right click on it, go to the blending options, and then we can add a gradient overlay to it. So we select our gradient overlay. This is the gradient overlay that I'm using. If you want to use the same thing, this is the first color and this is the second color. Mind you, you can as well select any color at all of your choice if you are using different colors. But then this worked for me for this particular project, so select it here. And then on top of that, I'm going to put my text. So for the text, we are using Poppins semi-bold. I'll paste my text right over here, press Ctrl T, and I'll transform it to fit into the text. So I'll leave a small portion here for something that we are about doing in a few seconds. So you see this part that we left, we go to File, Place Embedded, and then we'll bring in the logo. So for the logo, there's some background on it, so we can right click, rasterize the layer, and then we can go and select our magic wand tool here. Once you left click on it, you select the entire white, and then you can delete it. You press Ctrl D to deselect that, and then you press Ctrl T and transform it nicely. So you are going to put that one over here. That is the more reason why we left that one. And then you press Ctrl T to transform it some more. Something like this works fine. And then we can group these three. So the rectangle tool, you hold shift and then you select up to the Methodist logo. You press Ctrl G to group that, and then you can transform it to make it a bit smaller and take your time to position it. Next up, we'll choose our text tool again, and for this text we're going to use a font called Edwardian Script, and I'm going to paste the next text. So respectfully invite you to there, and then we are going to transform it nicely and position it. So this font is Edwardian Script. I'll leave links to download all the fonts also in the description, so if you want to download. The next font we'll go for is this particular font called Font Spring Demo. Okay, so we're going to use the bold version, and I've already copied my text. I copied the text so that the tutorial isn't kept too long, so you can just replace this text with your text as well. So I'm going to paste my text over here. So this is the commissioning service. We can also position it somewhere around here. If in case you have it straightforward like this, or you have it all on the same line, you just press enter, you put your cursor here, you press enter, and the next one will come to the bottom so that you don't have it like too long like that. For this one, we are going to add the same gradient overlay that we added to the rounded rectangle to this. So we can open the group, the rounded rectangle group, hold Alt and drag the FX on the rectangle onto that of the commissioning service, and it simply copies the FX, which is the gradient, onto the text. Next up, we choose our ellipse tool and create a very simple ellipse over here. You make sure that it is positioned almost in the middle. You might not really find the middle over here, but I mean, you try to, okay, using the guide. Now for this one, we are going to make use of the yellows in the Methodist Church logo as well. So you right click, go to the blending options, and then we are going to select gradient overlay. For that, we are going to use these colors right over here. So this is the first color, and this It's the second color. Just try to bring a shade of orange yellow into it so that it doesn't look just pure yellow. And inside of that, we are going to put off. So off, and you are using the front spring demo for this one as well. Press Ctrl T to transform it, and then you can position it nicely. So we now have the commissioning service off. So the next thing is going to be the name over here. We are still using the front spring demo, so we make a duplicate of the off, drag it down, and then we'll select all of it and change the color to white. Click OK, and we will paste our next text. Alright, so press Ctrl T, transform it to make it bigger because it is very important. The name is very, very important, and then you leave it there. I think this is too huge, so let's try to close it up slightly. Alright, so this is okay. Now let's switch up the font a little bit. So the next one we're going to use is called Century Gothic. I'll leave that in the description as well. So we are going to use that for our next test, and we paste that. Press Ctrl T, and then you transform it nicely and make it smaller, okay, because there are going to be other text or other information that we put over here. So you transform it and you position that as well. You remember the gradient overlay that we added to this? Yes, we do the same. So you hold Alt, drag the FX on this onto the next text, and it gets copied onto it very nicely. Next up, you're going to have our date, our time, and our venue. And for that, we are going to choose our rectangle. I remember we first set the radius to 50, so let's set it back to 0 because this time we need a normal rectangle, not a curved one. So you create a rectangle, you change the color to white, and you can see over here that the rectangle is on top of the image, which is not supposed to be so. So what we can do is can drag it right underneath of the image layer, okay, so that the image instead will be on top. You can open it up slightly and push it to the top. Now this is where we are going to have our date, our time, and our venue. So we continue to use the Century Gothic, and for the colors you're going to use some dark color from the backgrounds, okay, so the same background but a bit darker, and we'll paste our first text. So you select all of it, and then you change the color to something much darker. You press Ctrl T and you transform it. Now this is the date. You can press Ctrl T and transform it some more and keep it right over here. Now this is center aligned. So for this, we are going to also bring in the icon. So you go to File, Place Embedded, and then you can bring the date icon that I got from PNG Wing. You transform it to make it smaller, and then you can change the color, or perhaps you can even add your FX on this, the rectangle onto. So you hold Alt, drag the FX onto the PNG Wing, and let's do the same thing for the test and see how that one goes. Yeah, I think this one works fine. What do you think? So we can select these two, press Ctrl G to group that. We'll make a duplicate and drag it to the left side. So over here, we are going to change the text to the location, and that means we would have to drag it to this side a little bit. Okay, now we are going to replace the icon. So you can take off this icon and then go to File, Place Embedded, and bring in your location icon. Okay, so you transform it the same way, and then you can position it over here. You drag the FX onto it and you have your location also done. The same way, you are going to make a duplicate, drag it to the right side here, and we are going to replace this with a time. So the time is going to be 8 a.m. and that means we have to change this icon as well. So we go to File, Place Embedded, and then you can bring in your time. This is the time icon. Okay, I got all of these icons from PNG Wing, so you can download them. So you transform it, make it smaller, and then you can hold Alt and drag your FX onto it, and you are done. Now for these three, the date, the location, and the time, select the first one, hold Shift, and then you go to Layer, look for Distribute Layer or Distribute, and then you can see that distribute it horizontal center. So that means that the spacing between the horizontal from here to here should be the same as here to here. This helps to keep your spacing aligned, because if you can see, the spacing are not the same, but if you change it to distribute, it distributes the spaces evenly. You can do the same thing for vertical if it is going from top to down as well. I hope that makes sense. Lastly, we'll go right on top of this, and we are going to put where you can watch this or social media handles and all. So we are still maintaining the Century Gothic. We'll paste the text. So watch live on, and you can transform it over here. We then choose our ellipse to create a very small ellipse over here, any size that you want it. You can give it any color as well. You're just going to bring a logo in, so you go to file, place embedded, and then you bring the Wesleyan TV logo in it as well. You transform it nicely. Make sure it is right on top of the ellipse or the circle. Okay, right on top there. And then you can right click and create a clipping mask so that it fits right into the ellipse. Now you choose our rectangle to set the radius to 50, and then we can create a nice radius over here. Now pay attention here. For this, we want to give it just a stroke. So you go to the fill and you're going to set that to 0. Right click, and there are other ways to do this, but this is very simple. Right click and then select stroke over here, and then you can reduce your stroke to the size that you want. So I think 2 would work. You can press Ctrl T to transform it anytime or anyhow you want it. And then let's copy this watch live, make a duplicate, and bring it over here. And now we can change that to Wesleyan TV. Okay, so you press Ctrl T and transform this so that it fits right into this rounded rectangle that you created. So let's bring that to the top, select the 2 and make a duplicate, and we can drag it somewhere around here. Change that one to WTV, and that is going to be for Facebook. Okay, so we go to file, place embedded, and then we can bring the Facebook icon over here. You realize that this is already in circle shape, so you don't need to put it in any other circle. We actually had to do that for the Wesleyan TV because it was not in a circle shape. Okay, so you can take your time to transform that. It matches with the Wesleyan TV. And now we need to change the color of this one. You go to the layer, you right click, and then you can go to blending options, go to color overlay, and you can change the color to white as well. Once you're done, you go ahead and you click OK. So we can select these 3 and drag them to the left side a little bit, and then you can make a duplicate of the Wesleyan TV, drag it to the top, and put any other thing. So that can be contact or anything, so RSVP. And for that, I'm going to put my contact over there, put it slightly over here. For that, let's change the color a little bit. So let's add this FX onto this particular one so that it stands out a little bit. And that means that we can select from this end to the watch live, put all of those ones into one group like that, and then we can press on Ctrl T to transform it to make it a bit bigger. Okay, except of course if you are going to make the watch live, because that one feels too big. So let's make that one a little bit smaller so that it fits right into what we are trying to do, but it will all be in one group like that, and then you can position it down slightly. Again, even within the group, if you want to space it out, like I told you, that like I showed you earlier, you'd realize that from the watch live here till the Wesleyan TV is one group on its own, like that. From this rectangle to the WTV is one group on its own, and the RSVP will be on its own as one separate group. So you select the 3, you go to layer, distribute, and you can distribute that horizontal centers. And this is not working for single standalone test, so you can select that alone and try to close it up nicely, and then you can position all of them somewhere in the middle like this. Lastly, on the background, let's add a bit of curves to it so that you can make it some way darker. The blues will be more a little bit like that. And let's make some adjustment, quick adjustment to the image by going to camera raw and apply some small changes. So let's go to the detail and increase the noise and increase the sharpening as well. And we can make the clarity some more and add some texture as well. This looks good. We click OK, and now we have something like this instead of this. I think this looks better. What do you think? You can group all of these ones also, and that is going to be the test. This is the image, and this will be our adjustment or our background. So we can group this also as our background. And yeah, just like that, you create a very simple invitation for commissioning services, for send-off services, or for any other services that require. You can use this as an invitation. You can use it for envelopes or any other thing. You can even use this for flyers as well. Anyhow this fits for you, I hope you gain value out of it. And just like I mentioned, links to download the resources and All the tests will be in the description in case you want to practice. And you can send them up if you practice. If this video was helpful and subscribe to the channel, will be so very much appreciated. Thank you so much for sticking around to watch this video, and I'll see you guys in the next video. It's Innocent here, and bye.